Welcome, everyone. We'll get started shortly, but before we start, I'd like to give people a few more minutes to get their audio preferences settled before we begin. All right, so welcome everyone to today's webinar. Before I hand it off to our presenters, I just want to cover a few technical details. In case you haven't joined Acro webinar in the past, we use Zoom webinar, which is similar to Zoom meetings, except that your cameras and your microphones are disabled by default. To interact with each other and with our presenters, you have two main options. For discussion and general comments, you can use the chat button, and this defaults to hosts and panelists, meaning only they can see your message. But if you want everyone to see it, make sure you select everyone from the drop-down menu. If you have any questions, please utilize your Q&A button. You can ask questions at any time. And you can also edit your questions. You can ask anonymously. And without any further ado, I am handing it off to Julia Funaki.
Good afternoon and welcome everybody to the May edition of EDGE 3.0, the EDGE user group. We're glad you're here. May is the month of commencements and allergies, and so we're glad you made the time to join us. Without further ado, let me show you who our panelists are for today. We've got Jasmine Saidi-Kunert, the chair of the IESC, Drew Carlisle, and David Mihaly. Could you advance one slide, Thelma? There you go. There's their lovely mugs. We'll go on to the next slide and just talk a little bit about these folks. The International Education Standards Council is what Acro EDGE utilizes for our expert opinions and review of documents as to what's going to go into EDGE and discuss any topics that we might have related to EDGE. As I noted before, Jasmine Saidi-Kunert is the chair. She is also the president and CEO of AICE, and we welcome her and are glad to have her here, as well as several other members of the IESC. And they will come on camera and talk about some things as we get closer to their particular areas that they're going to discuss. So let's go on to the next slide, because the IESC is a wonderful group, and you see here what they do. They really are the ones that drive this monthly webinar and keep EDGE the dynamic resource that you all look to for assistance in your work. So to keep that group strong, we are looking for a few good folks to join the IESC. Could you go to the next slide, Donna? The IESC is looking for fellows, and it's really an opportunity for you to work with them and have a couple of dedicated mentors who would really follow you through in the research and help you to contribute to the content that is in EDGE. And it's a great way for you really to further your professional knowledge, and a great opportunity for professional development. And really what we need you to do is to think about applying, because on the next slide, we will alert you the deadline is coming up. It's this summer. There is the link to apply and fill out the form for the IESC fellowship. And part of what you would be doing with the IESC fellowship is participating in twice monthly video conferences. And you'll find that those are just a great session of debate, of discussion, and really very lively. You'll really get to work with some top-notch people who have been in the field for many years. This is a great opportunity for you. And you'll also be asked to, and we can help with webinars and conference presentations, including possibly writing for Connect and as I said, inclusion of some work into EDGE. So this is a great opportunity. And really, the IESC is only as good as it is able to bring in new and exciting professionals to participate in this work. So we hope that you will consider doing that. And I think at this point, we're going to launch a poll. Is that correct, before we start with the agenda?
Yeah, Julia, I think that's a good idea. We could find out who's here with us, joining us, in addition to me. You talked about my mug earlier. I'm hiding it behind a main here. The folks that we're curious to hear about, though, are those of you that may or may not be Edge subscribers, those that may or may not have ever been here before, and where all of you represent. Are you part of an institution? You come in here from an evaluation service, working with a government or a ministry, or maybe a law firm, immigration attorney? I have a pretty good idea that we're going to have about 2/3 of you are coming from schools. I'm guessing 3/4 of you have been to an Edge user group before. Belma, let's go ahead and close the polls and see what we have. So we've got a lot of Edge subscribers here. Those of you that are not, we have a free trial of Edge available for you. Sign up for a week and go look through, see if the information would be valuable for you and what you're doing in your day-to-day. Is this your first user group? 70%. I was guessing about what, 2/3, 75%? 70% have been here with us before. But for those of you that this is your first time, thank you so much for joining us. This is a great way for you to interact with the IESC, the folks that Julie was just explaining, get together and discuss all of these questions that get posed based on primary research and lots of expertise. And about 4 out of 5 of you are from schools. About 11 out of 65 of you precisely are from evaluation agencies, and someone is here representing a government. So thank you all for attending today. We're going to do kind of a tour of the world. We're going to start in West Africa. We've done some significant updates, and let's just summarize it with WIAC is a good way to kind of summarize that. Emily Say is going to get on and talk about that. But later on, we're going to have Robert Watkins discussing one specific example there in Sierra Leone. We need to talk about accounting degrees in France and some law updates that we've been doing throughout. There's a lot to be discussed, but let's dive right into the credentials. I know that's why everyone's here. Let's do WIAC. Emily, can I hand it over to you?
Yes, please. Thank you, Drew. All right, so what happened was we received a query from an Edge user regarding Sierra Leone. Although the senior school certificate is listed, he was requesting information about the West African senior school certificate, or why it was not listed there. And we realized that it needed to be there. So we updated Sierra Leone, and then it occurred to us that we really should be looking at all the other countries that are also served by the West African Examinations Council. So we went in and looked at the secondary school leaving credentials there, as well as the overviews to make sure that everything was up to date and aligned. So those 5 English-speaking countries in West Africa that we're talking about are the Gambia, going down the coast, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Ghana, and Nigeria. On to the next slide, please. So if you are interested in getting a nice in-depth treatment of secondary education in West Africa, for those of you who did not attend, I would like to refer you to the 2020 ACRO webinar on this very topic. The link is shown here, and it is just an excellent treatment of secondary education in these countries. It happened to be co-presented by Leslie Clausen-Eicher, who also sits on the International Education Standards Council. So it'll cover all the credentials and dates in those countries under WIAC. On to the next slide. So what we did with the updates in the Edge profiles was to make sure that the names were up to date as well as the dates. WIAC actually has been in the West African Examinations Council, has been established since 1952. So it's been around for a long time. And it has been involved in the awarding of quite a number of credentials, including the West African Senior School Certificate, the Senior School Certificate minus the West African part in front of its name, the Senior Secondary School Certificate, as well as the School Certificate and the Higher School Certificate. So as you can see, it's become the credential name game. And so one or some or all of the 5 countries had these credentials at some point in time awarded by WIAC. And so what we did was we made sure to clean it up and have it properly represented in the Edge profiles. On to the next slide. Just to give a quick background, one thing to note about these countries, with the exception of Liberia, they did all start off with the British pattern system of education, meaning the 13 years. So you had 6 years of primary, followed by 5 years of secondary, which capped off with O levels, and then an additional 2 years of pre-university leading to A levels. At varying points in time, each of those 4 countries transitioned over to a 12-year system with 6 years of primary, 3 years of lower secondary, and then 3 years of upper secondary, with them all now having the West African Senior School Certificate examination. So let's look at some of these credentials that have such similarly sounding names. On to the next slide. So the one that is most current that you'll see in all 5 countries, again, awarded by WIAC, is the West African Senior School Certificate. It represents, again, a total of 12 years of primary and secondary education. It is also known as WASC, WASSC, or WASSCE, with the E representing examination at the end. So when you're referring to this credential, you would use this acronym. If you say WIAC, then you are referring to the West African Examinations Council that administers and awards this credential. On to the next slide. So we do also have the Senior School Certificate, the plain Senior School Certificate without the words West African in front. It actually started in the late 1980s in Nigeria. And then what happened was in 1999/2000, NECO, or the National Examinations Council, came onto the scene with their own Senior School Certificate. So WIAC said, right, we're going to rebrand our Senior School Certificate to WASC, or the West African Senior School Certificate, West African Senior School Certificate examination, so that there's no confusion which version it is from WIAC versus from NECO. So if you see Senior School Certificate from WIAC, that's what's happening. It's an older credential in Nigeria before it rebranded to West African Senior School Certificate to offset it and distinguish it from the one from NECO, the National Examinations Council. On to the next one. So we have the West African Senior School Certificate and the plain Senior School Certificate, but there is also the Senior Secondary School Certificate, that is SSC. The SSC is specific to Ghana from 1993 to 2007. And then what happened was in 2006, Ghana adopted and switched over to the WASC, the West African Senior School Certificate. All right, on to the next one. So we've covered West African Senior School Certificate, Senior School Certificate, and the Senior Secondary School Certificate. But there's also the very understated and plain School Certificate, also awarded by WIAC. And this is the much older credential, and it was actually in all 4 countries, all the countries except Liberia. So this is when those countries were following the British pattern or system of education. And what would happen is if someone received or passed a minimum of 6 O-level subjects at credit pass or above, then it would get the group award of the school certificate. If they did not achieve that minimum of 6 subject passes at the O levels, then they would just get the general certificate of education, ordinary level certificate. But if they got 6 or more, then they would get the group award of the school certificate. And then you had a similar occurrence with the A levels and the higher school certificate. So the higher school certificate, like the school certificate, is a group award, was a group award. And if a student achieved a minimum of 3 A-level subject passes, as well as a pass for the general paper, then they would get the group award of the higher school certificate. So that was what was going on in a nutshell with all those similar sounding credential names that got cleaned up with the dates, and it's all reflected in the EDGE profiles now. And for more information, you can also refer to that webinar that's archived that I told you about from 2020. It has a nice, beautiful chart with the names and dates and when things transitioned. That's WIAC, but let's look specifically at Sierra Leone now with Robert.
Thanks, Emily. just a little more background. If you've been doing these webinars for some time now, you'll know that several months back, I took on grading because someone noticed, and I forgot what country they actually picked out in West Africa, but did not have the WEAC grading scale for the WASSCE in the particular country they were looking at. And so I said, okay, well, we'll fix that. We'll get that scale in there. And then I thought, well, you know what? We better look at the others as well. And sure enough, all 5 of them needed the grading scale in there. So we took care of that. But when you do one thing, there's often a ripple effect in EDGE. And I forgot that after I took care of the grading, we also needed to worry about the credentials and the overview. And so that's when Emily got involved and really did some major work in pulling all this together that you just heard. Specifically in Sierra Leone, what was noticed, and again, it was an EDGE user that brought this to our attention, was that the entry, you see there on the slide 3 bullets, the first entry, the West African Senior School Certificate Exam, was not even in there. So that was what we were going in to fix. And then we noticed that the others that were there needed to be, the school certificate and the higher school certificate needed to be massaged a little bit in order to get more fuller information. So we added, along with school certificate, the bit about the GCE ordinary level exams, and for the higher school, the advanced level exams, added those pieces, plus putting in the years that Sierra Leone made the transition from using a simple, from either using O and A levels or the school certificate to the WASSCE. And that and so we entered that as well and made sure that the EDGE user knows that Sierra Leone did one thing up until 2000, and then it transitioned after that. If you want to know, each of the individual entries of the 5 countries has the year in which they switched to WASSCE, and also that's also repeated in the grading section as well. So you'll find all that information in there. So I think we're done with West Africa, including Sierra Leone. So let's move to France, and I'll turn it over to Jasmine Zaidi-Keener.
Merci, Robert. Well, thank you, everyone. This interesting credential and its companion piece came our way at ACEI. We had an applicant who had studied for 2 years at a higher education institution in Cameroon, and then continued their studies in France. The document that they presented to us was the credential you see on your screen, the Diploma of Management Accounting. Yes, Diploma of Accounting and Management, Diplôme de Comptabilité et Gestion. This credential, if you are looking at it as a French applicant who is pursuing this program, requires completion of upper secondary school validated by the baccalaureate exam, and it is 3 years in length, and the students can continue their studies into a 2-year program following this diploma. Also, admission to the program can be possible for those who have completed the technician, the Brevet Technicien Supérieur, the BTS, or the Diplôme Université de Technologie, which is the DUT. If they're admitted based on these 2 credentials, the BTS or DUT, they're admissible into the 3rd year of this DCG program. If they're coming in with high school, the program is 3 years. Our candidate from Cameroon, because they had a 2-year program at the university level, was admitted into the 3rd year of the DCG. So our placement or credential advice for the 3 years is that it is a 3-year program, and it is comparable to 3 years of undergraduate study here in the United States. Can we please go to the next slide? Thank you. Individuals who hold the DCG may continue their studies for another 2 years and receive the Diplôme supérieur de comptabilité et de gestion, which is an advanced or a higher diploma in accounting and business. So the total program is 3+2 after the baccalaureate. What we have considered is that the combined 5-year program, it would be comparable to a bachelor and a master's degree. They can continue their studies based on with this DSCG into a doctoral program or the expert accounting program, which is an advanced postgraduate program. So bottom line is we have 2 credentials that kind of are companions to each other. The first one, the DCG, 3 years after the bac, followed by 2 years leading to the DSCG. Let me think if there's anything else. And I have Emily who assisted me with the credential advice for this. So Emily, if you'd like to hop on and add your insights, that would be great.
No, just that, as Jasmine mentioned, these are the accounting specific credentials, and they're what is needed to be on their pathway to become a chartered accountant in France.
Thank you for that, Emily. And now we'll pass this on to Dave, who will take us down to Panama.
Hi, thank you, Jasmine. Not only Panama, but El Salvador and Nicaragua as well. We noticed within the last couple of years or so that EDGE really didn't have separate listings for law credentials, and that's something that we're involved in here quite a bit at ACRO. The work has been done, and Koenig did Yo Person's work, I guess you would say, in pushing off the boat on this and getting all the entries ready. And Drew Carlisle serves as the labor getting them up into EDGE. They magically appear overnight. So we're going to have, this will kind of be a recurring feature almost, a lot of law credentials being added every week. In any case, kind of similar nomenclature between these 3 countries. The length of study is similar between 2 of them, although starting with Panama, we'll see that we have a 4-year, sometimes called the Licenciatura en Derecho, sometimes just the Licenciado en Derecho y Ciencias Políticas, which is law and political science. It still serves as a first professional degree in law. The political studies are just thrown in. And they happen to mention it at certain universities. But the credential represents completion of 4 years of university study and gives access to professional law and practice professionally in Panama. And next slide, please. In El Salvador, we have the Licenciado en Ciencias Jurídicas, and this is the 5-year post-secondary sequence of university study in law. In El Salvador, performs the same function for the holder. You can practice with this degree in the national courts in El Salvador. Let's see, and then we're going on one more to Nicaragua, and again, Licenciado en Derecho, 5-year program, and leads to professional practice. So this is just a kind of a thing that we're going to be doing throughout the user groups, is advising you on the addition of these credentials, and we have a whole slew of law in every country that is represented in EDGE, and we'll be letting you know as those go. And that'll do it. Oh, I'm handing off to myself.
I was going to say, Dave, you have a little bit more that you wanted to talk about. We, we've kind of been, over on that Central America side, but you wanted to talk about the subcontinent for just a little bit. We did find some things in Pakistan that are worth mentioning, I would say.
Indeed, on to South Asia. So we received communication from someone who had received communication from the USCIS, the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. And this person had some reports done about a 4-year bachelor plus a 2-year master's sequence. And he pointed out to us that we did not have an entry for the 2-year master following a 4-year bachelor degree in non-engineering/technology or non-health science fields. The health science fields are actually professional degrees in dentistry. But it's still a 4-year degree, and those are represented in EDGE. And in addition, we didn't have a separate mention of the Bachelor of Science 4-year degree in the non-engineering fields, although we did have a Bachelor of Arts listing, which we had combined into the engineering one. So long story short, we're going to add the Bachelor of Science to those 4-year degrees after completion of the HSC higher secondary certificate or the intermediate certificate. And we have a new entry for the master's degree. So these are 2-year master's degrees beyond a 4-year bachelor's degree. This will kind of fill in a hole that was, quite concerning to the person who notified us, because it's affecting his immigration progress. In any case, Pakistan is following with India in terms of having a new education policy that is really changing the landscape of education. We're specifically, more interested in the higher education credentials, but Pakistan is going to merit some further discussion in the months and years ahead. And so we'll be bringing those developments as we can work them out. And now I think I really am passing it off, Drew.
Well, so one of the things that we were going to be talking about were some of the upcoming events. And Dave, I was going to get you to chat about our upcoming international institute that we were going to have. But before that, let me get Julia in here just so that I can actually not have you hand it off to me to hand it off to you. We're not going to do like an end around reverse here. I saw some OSU conversation that was happening in the chat a little while ago. Julia, would you talk about what we were going to talk about here?
I'd be an OH, but yes, I can. And I just got an email, so I wanted to share this all with you right away, that on June 21st, ACRO is going to be hosting a webinar in which WEOC will unveil their new electronic verification system. And so we just got this email, and I just asked Drew if I could share it with everybody because I didn't want to wait until the next Edge user group. If we get a link on that or anything else, the reg page I don't think is live yet. We will try to send it out to as many of you and maybe put it into the international activities listserv as well. So those of you that are on the international activities list will find out about the reg page and be able to register right away for it. So that's exciting and glad to have that coming up. Please register. So live, and while it happens, we have the latest breaking news updates here. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this is about the International Institutes. They are back in person, and this year it's being held at the Royal Sonesta in Washington, D.C. This is a great place to have an institute. It's July 17th to the 20th, and you'll find that these institutes are really, and I'm guessing that some people will speak up. Ina might say something about her past experience with the institute. It really is a very engaging, very lively week in which you will learn a massive amount of information. We'll talk about education systems. We'll talk about transfer credit methodology. This will be good for you if you deal with undergraduates, graduates, whatever your level of admissions is. And it's going to be more than just China and the UK and India. We're going to talk about the UK and the subcontinent and lots of other places as well. So get in there, get registered now before it's too late. And hey, why not spend July in Washington, D.C.? It's lovely that time of year. Let's go on to the next slide. Also, much nicer weather. The Baden-Württemberg seminar, the applications are open. The Baden-Württemberg seminar is a seminar that is hosted by the Ministry of Research, Science, and Work. And it really is a great opportunity for a group of about 12 educators from the United States to come and learn about the German education system, about comparability, and really just to sort of build a rapport with German institutions and, possibly set up exchanges and such. The deadline for the application is June 26th, so you need to be thinking about turning in your application. All costs are covered by the ministry except for your transportation to and from the seminar in Germany. It will be hosted by Ulm University. This is actually going to be their second year hosting the in-person event, and they do a fabulous job. So consider it. Anybody, regardless of what your position is and where you are, think about applying if this is something that would be good for your institution and good for you. We've had registrars and study abroad folks, international admissions and credential folks as well. So really a great opportunity. You do need to provide a letter of support from your supervisor. And this is really just to say that you understand that you will be covering the travel expenses to and from the country. So get your applications in. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to think about including you on this trip.
So as you were shuffling around back there, Shelby, I heard you say that you had a great time when you attended the Baden-Württemberg. Would you jump on and mention that for just 2 seconds? And Julia, would you give the actual dates of that? I see there's a question in the chat.
I believe it's October 15th to the 21st. Of course, I don't have that right in front of me, but I think it's October 15th to the 21st. So you get in on a Sunday and kind of get oriented and have a meal Sunday. And then there's a closing dinner on Friday evening. So you would be leaving the following Saturday morning.
Very cool.
Shelby,
what'd you do?
I'd be delighted to. It was, I can't believe it. It was 16 years ago. I can't believe it was that long ago. And I still reference information that I learned on that trip 16 years later. The week was incredibly packed. Your day starts very early and you go the whole day, but we got a very deep overview of education starting from kindergarten all the way through postgraduate medical education. We visited with students, we visited with registrars, other officials who work with international students. It was incredible, and the amount of knowledge was great. Plus, we got to meet a wonderful cohort of colleagues, some of whom were in admissions, some of whom were in the registrar's office, some of whom were in study abroad the year that I went. And some of those people I'm still in contact with, and we still communicate with each other and help each other out. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And everything was covered except for the amount of chocolate that I ended up buying, which I had to pay for myself.
Yeah,
that is something.
Go ahead, Julia.
I was just going to say, they do work you hard. They work you from early in the morning into the evening, but they also treat you really well in between. Make sure you're always nourished.
Oh, they do.
The nth degree, German style. So it's a great opportunity. Go ahead, Drew. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, Shelby, thank you so much for getting on there. It's one thing to hear it from us, but from someone that's actually attended, it's nice to see that enthusiasm. I can see it and I can hear it, that it really is something that was impactful. So don't forget, everyone, the application closes next month. That's June 26th. And on the next slide, I think we have a little bit more that you wanted to chat about, Julia, before we open this up for questions. I know that we've had a few questions going through. But if you have some, go ahead and put them into the Q&A. We have been assembling many of your questions that you've been sending to the IESC. I've got a good list of those that are assembled up for a new list to be assembled for the agenda for them. So thank you all for submitting those. When you come across them in Edge, there's a contact us on every page within Acro Edge. So if you run into anything there, we love to update, I saw there was conversation about credential detectives and getting in there and doing the research. Any research you do on the front end will help us to make those updates sooner that go in here into Edge. And even things that are typos, even things, I know there's been conversation in our listserv about a misnomer for an Ethiopian credential. thank you for these conversations. These are the things that allow us to share this information. And these are great ways to interact directly. So put those questions in the Q&A, and Julia, I'm going to pass this to you.
All right, so just to mention the Gloria R. Nathanson Fund, this is a research fund for international education. We have awards up to $1,000 that can be made for research materials, direct costs related to research that you would need to do. And there's a wide variety of things you could cover. So if there's something you've really been researching for your institution or for your network, this would be a great opportunity to really share it with us and to get our support in doing that research, and to get some money back for all the time and effort that you put in it. We know how much time this kind of research takes, believe us. So we'd love to find out if we could help you out by helping you with a research grant. So think about what you might have that you're working on and what you might be able to look to us to give you some support and possibly even some money towards that work. And then final slide, next slide, is on our webinar archive. And really, here's where you can go in and you can find all the webinars that ACRO does. There are many of them. In fact, I just did an extensive webinar yesterday on study abroad in the registrar's office and all that's involved there. That will go up in this webinar archive. So perhaps you heard about something but you missed the webinar. Go in there and find it and listen to it. I think you'll enjoy that, and you'll find that it's very helpful to you. So without further ado, Drew, I think I'm turning, oh yes, and they're free. I should have emphasized that, free webinar archive. So Drew, let's turn it over to you. Do we have any questions in the Q&A yet? Ooh, we do.
So when I'm looking down here, I see that Mary Catherine Harden has said, we have some counselors who are asking if our university would accept the IBCP diploma. Are these considered equivalent to a U.S. high school diploma? Is the coursework vocational? Anyone want to get on and talk about how you would address that diploma if it came into your office? I mean, it does need to be an individual decision, right, Julia?
Well, I think so. And I can mention a little bit about it. But there's probably others out there who can answer more. The IBCP is the International Baccalaureate Career Pathway Diploma. And this is a third option that IB has made available. There's a full diploma that one can get. Then there's just, you can go in and do the coursework but not get the diploma, but there's also now the career pathway. I think it's called Career Pathway. And it is indeed conferred along with a high school diploma. And so, or whatever the credential is at that institution. Most institutions that offer an IB credential are offering another type of systems credentials as well. So you would look to that as well. And if you were to decide, I don't know what institutions are doing as far as credit goes for the career pathway diploma. Certainly with the IB full diploma, credits are often given for higher levels. And so subsidiary levels to some extent, and that's an institution by institution decision, but the International Baccalaureate Organization has got a wonderful website with a wealth of information if you're interested in. So possibly Mary Catherine or others could type in the chat what they're doing with this diploma. And if anybody else wants to speak up, let me know.
We certainly give credit at UT Austin for the IB academic ones, but only for higher level. But as far, I've not seen a pathway yet, pathway course. And so just hearing this a little bit right now, the vocational nature of it, I would have to say no. We certainly wouldn't give credit for it, and we would look for another credential, either a U.S. high school diploma or an overseas, indigenous diploma from another country before we would consider freshman admission.
At my university system, we've seen a couple of these in the last year or so, and these have typically been accompanied by the IB diploma itself. And so we consider the career program just to be vocational in nature. We don't give any type of advanced credit to it. We don't use that as an admission document. They do have to have that IB diploma or their local secondary school leaving document, whatever it might be.
And just one more thing I will add from a personal standpoint, one of my children got the career pathway, career program, and there were no institutions in the Virginia area that he was applying to that would have given credit for that. But I had another one that did the diploma, and that indeed was given credit. So I think that's very common, very typical that at this point, most institutions have not awarded credit for the career program, but typically for the whole full IB diploma, yes. But I would also say, as far as equivalency goes, when the student has this, they're going to have another credential as well from whatever the indigenous system is they're following, whether it's a U.S. high school diploma or something.
Thank you for all of those thoughts, guys. And I'm gonna enlist all of you again because I want your thoughts on credentials in India. I have a dartboard, you can't see it. Dave, what you got?
So this is a good question. You usually see, well, I usually see these in relationship to a BCom, a Bachelor of Commerce degree. And you'll see Bachelor of Commerce, and then in parentheses, it'll say vocational. You know, sometimes there's an unfortunate pejorative connotation with vocational here in the US anyway. And these, you know, it's not to, shouldn't, you know, devalue the fact that this is a full BCom degree. What they do is they take 4 common core subjects. This is the old style BComs, you know, they're in flux right now, but they take, you know, basically the 4 common core subjects per year that the other students take. And then they branch off into practical projects that are often based on, you know, work that they're doing with a company or within the college itself. And so it's just a more practically oriented degree where you're learning by doing. So you might have marketing projects in other subjects. It could be, you know, computer aided accounting or whatever, depending on what the subjects are that you're doing for the vocational. But they definitely do lead to an NCOM. So it's not a terminal degree that is less than the regular BCom. I don't know if anybody else has anything they want to add to it, but it would be useful to, I think, point this out, maybe in if not in a separate entry, then in the overview of the wording. So that's something that we'll probably want to take a look at.
All right, that was a good dart throw. Thank you for that, Dave. So let's see, from an anonymous attendee, we also have comments that our university receives several Nigerian bachelor transcripts that are missing the first year of study. Is there another document or type of transcript they must submit in place of their first year study? What would you do if you didn't have the full documentation from a student that submitted from within your country? Do you have a policy that's existing? You might look there if you wanted some place to start. But Robert, do you have thoughts on this or India? I'm not sure what you were coming in for.
India, I think Dave did a marvelous job on India. I've actually not seen any of those vocational ones yet, but I'm much more, but based on his explanation, I'm much more likely to accept that since it's a BCom degree. I mean, not as a bachelor's, of course, but certainly for transfer credit and so on. I see it not all that much different from perhaps a BTS in France or similar kind of technical diploma degree elsewhere. But as far as Nigeria is concerned, you're right. There's 2 possibilities here. One is that in fact something's been left off, or it's a forgery or what have you. But more likely, the explanation is that the individual has been dropped into second year of a 4-year degree program. The thing to hold in mind, even if it's 3 years in the end, keep this in your mind. Nigeria does not have 3-year degrees like India does and some other countries. These are 4-year degrees. It may be 4 years done in 3 because of prior learning, but it's a 4-year degree. What you ought to do is to go back to that transcript and look to see if that first year the courses are numbered 200 level, and then the next year 300, and the next year 400. That clearly means that they used to do it all the time if the individual had A levels, but A levels have essentially gone away in West Africa since the late 80s. And so it's some other kind of prior learning, even if it's experiential, which I don't like. The bottom line is you wouldn't have to give credit for that missing first year if they wanted a second degree. You give credit for years 2, 3, 4, but this is still a bachelor's degree, no matter what got them into second year. Okay.
And it looks like your comments might have hit a tangent for Bradley, because there's a question posed. How does everyone view a combination of a 2-year national diploma and a 3-year higher national diploma from Nigeria? Is that an undergraduate degree, given that it can lead to a postgraduate diploma and then a master's?
Why don't you let me continue then? But I do want some others to jump in as well. Emily and I have had this conversation about the ND and the HND, and then what might happen after that, and then where do we finally end up? I think everybody here who is familiar with EDGE knows that in EDGE, the higher national diploma in Nigeria is considered undergraduate credit and not a bachelor's degree. We see, and I personally feel this way strongly, that there is a credential that's comparable to the U.S. bachelor's degree in Nigeria, and it's called the bachelor's degree. And the HND to me is not the same thing. Yes, it can access master's degrees, but only under certain circumstances, usually upper credit or higher GPA are they allowed to go into a master's program. Now, the questioner said, Bradley said, a 2-year ND and a 3-year HND. I've not seen a 3-year HND except once, and it was because the guy was doing it not as a full-time student. Traditionally, these are 2+2s. Now, it wasn't that way back in the days of O and A levels, but it is now. And so the question then arises, to carry Bradley's thought a little bit further on, at what point does that HND suddenly become U.S. bachelor's degree comparable? And that's the conversation Emily and I had, and we both finally conceded that a postgraduate diploma on top of the HND would probably lead us to reluctantly agree that we probably have a bachelor's comparable situation. It's easier for me because it's just an admissions question. For credential service, it's a little tougher question because you have to come down on the side of an absolute yes or no. And Emily can jump in here, but I gathered that we agreed that a 1-year PG diploma on top of the HND would finally get us there. Naturally, a master's degree, if they did get into one, certainly that's a master's degree. And we don't even have to worry about what the comparability of the HND is or not. It's just a technical add-on to their record. And in the case of UT Austin, we would post a master's degree for that master's in Nigeria, but we would not post a bachelor's level degree awarded on their record for the HND. And with that, I'll let someone else jump in.
If I may jump in, the fact remains that Nigeria does award a bachelor's degree. The HNDs, the ONDs, or the national diplomas are offered by polytechnics who do not have the authority to grant bachelor degrees. There's great debate going on the Senate floor of the Nigerian government as to whether they need to recognize the HNDs as bachelor comparable, but it's been tabled. And that's the argument they have, is that a bachelor's degree is readily available if one pursues it at the universities. So as a credential evaluation service, we will not recognize the combination of the national diploma and the higher national as bachelor equivalent. However, as Robert said, if they have completed a postgraduate diploma, we will then consider all of that as comparable to a bachelor's. but they do not have direct access to a master's program. To date, I haven't seen it. We have done some research with the universities, and we did not find that they will readily admit that they have taken anyone with an HND into a master's. So that's where we stand.
Anecdotally, I have heard H&D holders going into master's degrees, but I believe those situations are MBAs, and we do know and recognize that MBAs are special situations. Just to add on to what Robert and Jasmine were saying, the national diploma and higher national diploma are offered at polytechnics, which do not have degree granting powers. Because this is contentious in Nigeria, there has been talk about upgrading polytechnics to be able to offer Bachelor of Technology, but as Jasmine mentioned, they've been tabled. When you see someone with an HND going on to a postgraduate diploma and then a master's, it is because they are doing the postgraduate diploma in order to be eligible to enter a master's degree. Normally speaking, H&D holders would go directly into year 3 of a bachelor's degree. And if they don't do that, if they don't go into year 3 and finish up an actual bachelor's degree, then they would have to do the postgraduate diploma to be eligible to go into the master's degree program.
Also, someone, I think Joanne has pointed out that they, from their standpoint at their institution, look at the ND plus HND, 2 + 2, I guess, 4 years as comparable to U.S. bachelor's degree. And, certainly that's an institutional decision. I know ECE in Milwaukee, because I did a presentation with one of their people some years back. I know they did say that. IRF once upon a time did agree that the HND was a bachelor's degree, but it was a long time ago. And I immediately emailed Emily, and she said, we don't do that anymore. So it's, it's obviously an institutional prerogative. We would suggest that, given the things that you've heard here from Jasmine and Emily and so on, that that it's the bachelor's degree from Nigeria that's comparable, not the HND, at least at the present time.
My institution system, my current institution system does say that this combination is equivalent to a bachelor's degree, but my previous institution would not say that it was equivalent to a bachelor's degree, but they would allow these people to be considered for graduate admission on the basis of they could potentially be admitted into a graduate program in their home country. That being said, a lot of these students weren't considered competitive enough to join the master's degree programs, but that was something that my previous institution did.
So there really is a wide variety of ways that people look at this. Thank you for hearing how each of you does that currently and back in the past. Anyone have any question that's been posed here that stuck out to you, Robert? We've got a question about Mexico and Teachelos and
sure. Yeah, you bet. Basically, you need, it is absolutely imperative that you have the Teachelo, because there could be other reasons. I don't see it as much with the Maestria as I do with the first degree, whether it's licenciado or whether it's professional title like ingeniero or something along those lines. Instead, what they'll have is they'll have the diploma known as a carta de pasante. It says that they finished all the coursework, but there's something that still is keeping them from getting the actual awarded degree. And that something could be anything. It could be as little as owing library fines to as big as didn't do the professional exam if there is one, didn't do the thesis if there is one, didn't do their social service. Sort of unlikely. That's usually done at in between 3rd and 4th year, but that's a possibility too, that they didn't do that. Often you'll see these because individuals intend to migrate to the United States, knowing they're not going to practice their profession in Mexico. There's no reason to get the actual awarded diploma, because what they normally do, if they did, would be to take that titulo to SEP, Secretary of Public Education, and get a cedula, a license to practice being a biólogo or ingeniero or whatever. So you do need to have that title in addition to the transcript. The Mexican transcript will not tell you that. It may say that it's all the courses completed, but that's not everything needed to get the degree. So be careful of that.
Thank you, Robert. And let's see. Anyone have any good information other than the Wayback Machine about the NAAC website from India? If anyone has it downloaded, Isabella would love to get in touch with you, I'm sure.
I haven't used it lately, but it seemed like it was fairly up to date when I was using it up through the first quarter of this year. I was using it frequently in order to see. Now, let me just point out to Isabella and to others that NAC accreditation is noteworthy. If you hear that being said in quotation marks, that you're absolutely right. It is an attempt by the UGC to institute a certain level of quality assurance with respect to institutions. But in terms of recognition and whether or not, this is an acceptable institution awarding degrees, that can only be the UGC. So the first order of business would be to go into the UGC, make sure that that is a recognized UGC institution, or if it's a non-degree granting, then you go into the AICTE website and then turn around and look at your NAC website if you want to see a sort of quality assurance. What the other piece is you need to know what those mean. What does an A++ mean? What does a B++ mean, and so forth. They only go to they don't go below B, and they're constantly upgraded. They're only good for 5 years. So every 5 years they're going to get reassessed and get a new accreditation ranking and so on. Again, it's more quality assessment than it is absolute recognition. So that's the piece to bear in mind, Isabella.
Okay.
And it does go up and down. I hadn't realized it'd been down for weeks, so that's something to be concerned about, I suppose.
I did just go over and check it right now. A couple different browsers, tried it just to see. It's also down right now. So it is not just you, Isabella. And speaking of India, has anyone seen where one registrar signs both its own transcript and the state board mark sheets? If you have seen that, an anonymous attendee is curious about any of your experience. But if you haven't seen that, Dave, I see you might have thoughts.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I'm trying to imagine a situation where that would happen. Could be that the university might retain a copy of the board examinations that had been, submitted for admission, and then sent that out later. But I've never seen that situation. So maybe somebody else could speak about it.
You're absolutely right, Dave. It seems to me, I haven't really seen it either. The only thing I can figure is that something's not quite right there, or maybe it's an after the fact. This is an old photocopy that's being attested by a registrar. But the person who's supposed to sign the mark sheets when they come out is the controller of exams, and the registrar worries about diplomas and so forth, because that's what they're issuing. The colleges are issuing if they're autonomous college, they're issuing the mark sheets and so on with the exam results on them. So having both of those is kind of unusual. I'd say, I wouldn't say you've got a forgery there. If you can look at the date awarded, or if the date that all this happened, if it was long ago in the past, it may be that the individual is trying to get a duplicate made and just brought it all to the registrar, and the registrar is dealing with it long after the fact, not immediately upon completion of the exams and the awarded degree.
All right. So not necessarily a red flag, but not something that is commonly come across. Thank you all for joining us today. We are here at the end. It's just about the top of the hour. If you have time, we would love for you to come back every third Thursday, where we'll be giving you more updates about what's been going on. If you've submitted a question to us, go ahead and bookmark that within Edge, because any of those updates that get made in the interim, you'll get notified right then and there. Belma, I think on the next slide, we might have just a little bit more information about ways that you can join the International Activities Group. Join the conversation, ACRO. Google that is the easiest way for you to get there from right here. If someone can stick that into the chat, we could do that, but join the conversation with us. The International Activities Listserv will also send out information on those webinars for WIAC. Thanks, and have a great one, everyone.